order the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for today, October 28th. Carla, would you like, oh, well, let's do the pledge first. Mr. Burns, would you do that?
Please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Connor.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Hockman.
Here.
Vice Chair Larimore Hall is not present, and Intern Torres Santos is not present.
Thank you. Ms. Zachary, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Any written communications? No. Okay, public comment. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 1 minute on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the Commission. And, okay, we have a public comment.
Fast.
Okay,
I'll fill this out after and hand it to you. I'm Wanda Livernoy, 533 Brinkerhoff. There's a project proposed for 512 Bath that is a pretty big project, 50-some units. And there's a fantastic chamois ash tree kind of in the middle over to one side. Maybe a garage is proposed. You know, they want to take it down. And I wish somebody from the city would look at it and say, we ought to save that one. Okay?
Thank you.
It'll be before the Architectural Board of Review, I think, this coming Monday.
Thank you very much. If you could give your form to Ms. Zachary there, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. Seeing no one else, we will move on to community service recognition. Ms. Zachary, do you want to introduce this?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Ricardo Venegas from Neighborhood and Outreach Services is going to be giving the report for the recognition.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Longstreet and members of the Commission. My name is Ricardo Venegas, and we wanted to come before you today to recognize some of the volunteers that took part in the free family portrait that took place on Saturday, June 13th, 2009. This particular project was coordinated by Mrs. Crystal Sturm, who's a member on the advisory committee. She took it upon herself to contact businesses and local photographers to offer free family portraits to our families in the East Side. As a result of her efforts, we had a total of 35 families and 11 individuals that came to the event, and they basically went through and had their photos taken, a portrait. Each family received up to 30 different shots or poses. In addition to that, they were given a free portrait, a color portrait, to take with them. In addition, we had the Staples store downtown donate CDs in which we were able to also place the rest of the shots for the family so that they can have a future reference as well. The Franklin Center Advisory Committee and the Parks and Recreation Department would like to recognize Crystal Sturm for her efforts in putting together this event, as well as the following businesses and individuals. We have two of the volunteers, including Crystal, here today. And we want to recognize them for their efforts. So I'll have them come up here, and if Crystal and maybe some of the volunteers want to say a few words. And I'll also mention some of the other folks that could not be here with us today due to employment obligations. So Crystal, once again, thank you for all your efforts. It took a lot of work and effort in coordinating and getting everybody there, and we just want to say thank you. It was a big project, and the families really appreciate what you did. So thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to add our thanks as a commission, and also say not only is what happened that day to bring families in for portraits, but that those families came to the center and that we get to know them and they get to know what services are available through the city. So it's such important outreach, and thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
And also Carolyn Jones, she also participated in the event. And again, Carolyn, thank you for your contribution. It was really nice that you guys were able to give your time and talent to basically help our families out.
Thank you very much for your assistance. And, you know, it's so nice to have active members out in the community. It makes a big difference, and it'll help us in this next step of broadening our services in the community. So thank you. Do you have something you'd like to say?
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the city for letting us use the space of the Franklin Center. Without that, we definitely couldn't have afforded to do the event. And obviously, I want to thank all the photographers for their time. I don't know if you mentioned Specialty Color Services, but they donated a free 8x10 to every family, which is a big deal because Specialty Services is, you know, it's not Kodak. It's not like the little machine that you go to Walgreens at. They're a big deal. That's who the professionals use. So we really appreciate them doing that and putting their name on the project, and all the people that volunteered. And Ricardo for saying, yes, let's do this, because we did it fast. We planned it and executed fast.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also want to mention some of the other people that couldn't be here today, and that includes Christian Taylor, Scott Gibson, Katie Grace Clay, Stan Sinclair, Levi Christensen. Additional volunteers included Jill Cunningham, Becca Thompson, David J., and Charles Alexander. So again, thank you to all these individuals that made this special event a great success.
Thank you, and thank you for coming here tonight. It's great. Okay, always a good way to start. That brings us to Commissioner Committee Assignment Reports. Anyone have anything to report? Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Chair. Some of these things you may jump in on. The first thing is the Park Foundation, which Chairman Beebe and I are members of and liaisons for, had a fundraiser with the Whole Foods, new Whole Food store. We raised about $4,000 and a little,
$97, I think.
almost $4,100, which is great, and it helped let people remember that the Park Foundation exists and what the Park Foundation does. The Teen Council is meeting every other week. One of the things they did, which was great and got a lot of good publicity from, was the candidates forum on October 12th. They had supposedly 120, 130 people there, and most of the candidates, and that was also got good publicity out of that, and that was very good. The Arts and Crafts Advisory Committee has met. There is some issues that they'd like to get resolved between us and them on how they're going to be formed, if they're going to be formed differently in the future, and that's getting worked out. But that's moving forward. And last but not least, I'm on the multi-jurisdictional Front Country Task Force, which handles the trails along with the county and the Forest Service. And they're moving forward with the process of hiring a new coordinator, part-time coordinator, and the process of, I'm going to use the word mapping the trails, is moving forward also with the trails that were not part of the burn area. Hopefully will be done in November, and the other trails, Rattlesnake and Tunnel, will probably be done in, February or March after the rainy season. That's my report.
And I would just add to that they will be looking for volunteers to help with this process. So, yeah, so that's important. Does anyone else have any?
Do you have details on how people can volunteer?
I think if they were to call Jill Zachary. No, actually, they should call Kathy Fry at Parks and Recreation.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, we're starting that work effort in November, and anybody that wants to help volunteer, they go through a short training, don't need to know about trail assessment, just need to be able to be out on the trail for 4 to 8 hours, depending on the day, working with an experienced trail assessment staff person who luckily comes to us by way of Beneficial Designs, which is the company that spearheaded this type of trail assessment. And Kathy Fry in our office is the person who's organizing it, and her number is 897-1976, or can always contact me too.
Thank you. Yes?
And just as an adder on that, generally they're hoping to do the work on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, so it's not during the weekend, but during the week. If someone's able to help, they're hoping to get teams of 3 people out And if you can even do one day, I'm sure they would appreciate it, or we would appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I attended the Douglas Family Preserve Technical Advisory Committee report. I'd encourage people to go up to the Douglas Family Preserve and see the work that was done through a grant received from the Land Trust. The Oak Grove Trail has been rehabilitated, I would say. It's so the drainage flows better and the trail won't erode. And there's been a lot of removal of pittosporums up there. So there's firework going on, and there will be a planting in late January. So look forward to seeing some publicity about that. Restoration is moving forward slowly, and the DFP can always use volunteers. I'd just like to add my thanks about the Park Foundation event to Whole Foods. That was a very nice event, and I think was good publicity for the department and the foundation. And I also attended the city administrators meeting for chairs and vice chairs, where, of course, the budget was a big part of the discussion, and it was interesting to hear how each of the departments is dealing with the challenges ahead. So it was a good meeting. Okay, anybody else? Yeah, that'll bring us to commission and staff communications. I'd just like to start off, I read in the paper yesterday that Joan Kent, the Assistant City Administrator, will be retiring. And she has been our staff administrator for a few years and been very supportive of this department. And it'll be a great loss, I think, for us. So, Jill, did you have anything to add?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, only to reiterate what you've said, Ms. Kent has been working with our department closely for the past number of years, and as we've gone through the various changes as a result of financial situations, but then also ways in which we've looked at restructuring our department to make us more effective in the long term, Joan Kent has been right by our side helping us figure those things out. Her retirement date is December 10th, so there will be an opportunity in the next few weeks to thank her as well.
Thank you. Any other commissioner staff communications? Okay, we will go back to the Youth Council report if our intern comes in, but that brings us to the consent calendar. Do we have any comments on the summary of council actions? It's good to see our RAP and AOK moving forward. Okay, that brings us then, if there's no comments, to the approval of the minutes. We have minutes for September 23rd and October 6th.
Move that we waive the reading of the minutes and approve them.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. One abstention. And one abstention. Okay, so noted. All right. Now we are to our Street Tree Advisory Committee items. Mr. Downey.
Good afternoon, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. We have a short agenda for this month. We have
I
two items.
noticed.
The first one is 918. The first one is 421 Milpas, and I'm not certain why that one's not coming up. Bear with me. We'll do it that way. The 421 North Milpas is receiving a revitalization of the building, and as part of that, they wanted to open up the visibility of this side of the property. The two, we'll call them trees, located in planters are very dense and obstruct light and make it difficult to see people in the area. They also wanted to replace those with street trees that would be up above any activity in the sidewalk area. The Street Advisory Committee and staff determined it would be more appropriate to determine replacement trees once we saw a landscape plan and elevation plan so that we can determine how many trees could be placed on the property and then make the determination about the removals at that time. Street Advisory Committee would approve the removals on the condition they planted trees. They're just reluctant to make a recommendation because they don't know how many trees they might want to place. Therefore, Street Advisory Committee staff recommends this be postponed until those plans are made available.
Okay. We do have a designated street tree for that area, right?
We do. It's the Lafostum and Confertus. It's a Brisbane box tree.
Is the Street Tree Advisory Committee thinking they want to change the recommended street tree?
There is a recommendation or a request at the November meeting to change that designation by the applicant.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this is making more sense because it didn't exactly make sense to me before why we would be looking at need to look at any further plans if we already had a street tree designation. And, we wanted to stick with it.
Chair Longstreet, the issue is how many replacement trees due to visibility of traffic. We can't place one that close to the corner for one of these trees. So we're looking at what their plans are for with the rest of it so that possibly we could put a second tree on the other side of the driveway that's in this picture. Okay. But we need to see those plans to make that determination.
Are there other questions? Okay.
Move that we concur with advisory committee and staff on 4A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 918 Garcia.
918 Garcia is a fairly large coral tree. The reasons stated were for high fire hazard removal because they wanted to protect the space for fire reasons. The Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff visited the site, and the tree is in poor condition. It's been poorly maintained in the past. The tree could be trimmed to achieve fire department clearance. However, it would be a drastic pruning to this tree, one that is, again, has been poorly maintained in the past. And the determination was that if that pruning were to occur, this tree probably would then fall apart. Based on the poor condition of the tree, Street Advisory Committee staff recommend that the tree be approved for removal on the condition that another tree that can grow as large as this one is planted in its place. The new tree could be maintained in such a way to keep it pruned out of the fire accessibility area.
Okay. Questions?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, and Mr. Downey. So the recommendation is that we approve the removal as long as a new tree that could get as large and then would be or could be kept trimmed for fire access. Are there any guarantees that it would be maintained in such a way as to do those things?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Huckman, the fire department is actively working in these areas to keep plant material pruned for their standards and maintains a communication with people anytime their trees start to come into conflict with those as a result of their high fire hazard area accessibility plan.
So as a follow-up then, how did this tree get into this shape?
This particular tree, I'm uncertain what the fire department's time frame was for this area, but they are advised when we remove a tree because of these reasons, and they will then be on notice that this tree's been planted because the new tree's been planted because the old one was removed for that reason. So they will be aware of the situation, and it's their jurisdiction to keep on top of those things.
Okay.
I would say everybody's awareness is much heightened after the last year, and I think there was a lot of effort that went into the Riviera and into that fire assessment district prior to the last couple of fires, and I think it's broadened out. It would be the answer to why now, why this tree. So, okay, is there any further questions, a motion to this one?
I move we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and the staff to let this tree be removed at 918 Garcia Street.
Second.
Okay, and does that concur with the recommending the entire recommendation for replacement also?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. A short tree night. Yeah. That's right. And that brings us to item 5. Thank you, Mr. Downey. Santa Barbara Zoo Annual Maintenance Report for information. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet and members of the Commission, this is a report that the Commission receives each year. Rich Block, the director of the zoo, would be happy to come and give you a full-fledged presentation. Essentially, the goal of tonight's information is to give you a status report on all the activities at the zoo, their recent exhibits, and where they hope to be going in the next couple of years.
I just wanted to note that I did run into Mr. Block, and he very much would like the Commission to come for a tour.
I always like those tours. We got to feed giraffes last time.
I know, it was great.
Field trip. I just would like to say that the report, we're lucky to have such a good small zoo in our community. I think that the innovation showed in recent years has really brought the facility up to date, and they continue to be very innovative. Other comments or questions? Okay.
I have a question. Is it appropriate at this point, does this commission then accept these reports into the record by vote, or just by presentation?
Well, it was for information. We can vote to accept the report.
The Commission would like to do that. Certainly, you can take that step.
Okay, I don't want to set precedent, but but if that's what we do, then I would move we accept the report into the record.
Stating on the agenda that it's a just for information item and not an action item, is that necessary? That's my question.
I don't know if it's necessary, but I don't think it hurts.
Okay.
It'd be my feeling on it, because we're not taking any action. We're just accepting the report as presented. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And thank you to the zoo for presenting that to us. Now we're to the 21st Annual Senior Expo.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Senior Recreation Supervisor Jason Bryan will give you this report.
Are you feeling a little displaced these days, Mr. Bryan?
Just a little displaced.
Okay.
I'm settling in at the Louise Lowry Davis Center, and we're still living out of boxes, but pretty soon everything will be in place.
Okay.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, my name is Jason Bryan. I am the Senior Recreation Supervisor for Active Adults and Classes, and I would like to present a brief review of the 2009 Senior Expo. I presented a similar presentation 3 years ago. We are now at the 21st annual of these events, and it's going quite well. We have picked up some new exhibitors and quite a few new attendees at this event. And I'll try to focus on more of the new items that we've added this year, because there was quite a few additions that we've made and improvements that we've made this year. Typically, the event is held in November, and that was our plan this year. But because of the H1N1 virus and that vaccine, the health departments noticed they wanted about a month in between vaccinations, if possible. So we had to move this earlier. It's the H1N1, is still an issue, and that was not the flu vaccination that we offered here, but. Just a couple months before the event, we got the notice, and we all kind of regrouped and got it together to hold the event. The actual day was October 8th. One of the changes that we made this year is we spilled into both of the buildings at Earl Warren Showgrounds. The last 2 years we were in the Dome building alone. This year we combined both buildings together for a total of 35,000 square feet of interior space for this event. It's gotten to be quite a big event. We continue to offer coffee, lunch, fitness testing, a lot of the things that we've done in the past. But we've dedicated the larger Dome building to the exhibitors and lunch, and the smaller Warren Hall, which is behind the Dome building, that was dedicated for fitness testing and for the flu shots themselves. The Area Agency on Aging, AARP, AAA Auto Club were some of the sponsors of a car fit program. This was one of the programs that was offered in the parking lot. It's an educational program for older adults that gives them the opportunity to check how well their personal vehicle fits them. Trained volunteers make adjustments to mirrors, seat positions, and other features as part of a 12-point checkup to make them safer on the roads. Another new service this year was the Sheriff's Department's medication disposal program. It can be a challenge to dispose of older medications because you're not supposed to flush them, you're not supposed to put them in the trash. So a lot of seniors tend to hold on to these for many years, so this gives them an opportunity to safely dispose of them. 106 people participated in this part of the expo. A total of 170 pounds of medication were collected, including 71 of the seniors who had controlled substances that they were disposing of. One of the other additions that we had this year is we had a transportation demonstration in the parking lot. MTD set up a bus, and they spoke about and kind of interactive with the seniors. They talked about the vehicle's accessibility features, and they answered questions about routes and services. We also worked with Easy Lift Transportation, who provided free transportation to the event, as well as some scheduled routes that they were running for that day. So it was great to have a little bit more transportation involvement on the Senior Expo. And this was kind of a last-minute addition to it, but ShredRite donated document destruction services. So another way that the seniors could be served and get rid of all those old records without the threat of identity theft. There were a couple not a lot of people took advantage of this because this was something within the final weeks of the preparation. This was added in, but there were some seniors who came. Their cars were absolutely loaded. Boxes, back seat, trunk, front seat. It was great to be able to provide that service for them. Last year's event, we had a big challenge. We had everything in the Dome building, and the flu shot processing took quite a while. There were some people that were in line for over an hour. Although the event was successful, just about everyone got their flu shots. The very final people didn't. This year, we were so concerned about that. That's one of the reasons we included both buildings, and it worked out well. The lines flowed very quickly. I didn't see anyone in line for more than say 10 minutes. So it really did work out a lot of our planning. There was a small second line for the flu shot area, but that again moved very quickly as well. Like we did the last couple of years, those people that were in line were treated to a Dixieland band out front, and many of the people who had their lunch, they went out there and enjoyed the music while they were eating lunch. Admission this year increased from $5 to $10. The last, for as long as I've been on the committee, it's been $5 for admission. So we were worried about that, but there's a lot that they get for those $10. It includes the parking, a flu shot, lunch, coffee, water, fitness testing, and a bunch of goodies that the seniors pick up from all the exhibitors there. So it really is a steal at $10, especially considering that flu shots will typically cost you more than that when you go to your doctor's office or to many of the other clinics that are around town. This is a shot of the Warren Hall, that rectangular building behind the dome building, and we had a team of volunteers who helped seniors fill out the paperwork, direct traffic, and we had a really nice routing system, so we had multiple stations for things, so that this line, again, moved very quickly, and it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but we had 2 long rows of seats where the seniors can actually sit down and fill out their paperwork. That's something that we didn't have last time. People were standing in line with clipboards, and it made it a lot more comfortable for everyone involved. So the flu shots, I think all around we made improvements this year. Nurses from several agencies plus nursing students from Santa Barbara City College work together to actually administer the shots. And as we've done in last years, the last several years, we've included the senior fitness test program, which is very easy to do, a series of simple exercises, timing how many arm curls they can do and what their flexibility is. All the information is collected, and we give the seniors a report at the end of the day that says that, okay, you may be a 65-year-old, but your upper body strength is rating of about an 82-year-old. So this is an area that you can address to make improvements for mobility in the future. We had more agencies involved than ever before, a total of 98 agencies, and this is the first time we did not have a single no-show. There's always, out of 100 organizations, and a couple of them are out of town, we always had 1 or 2 no-shows, but every single one showed up this year. The organizations represented government programs, nonprofits, and private businesses offering services to the senior citizen community. Products for seniors were demonstrated so participants can test drive items such as large button telephones with experts there to answer their questions. So it's very informative. And a little basket here, a lot of them had things on the table to attract them in, whether it's goodies or raffle prizes or different things that the seniors were interested in. Here's another one of our interactive booths that we had. We had the seniors trying the Wii Fit so they can see what it's like. So with all the grandkids are playing. So just another opportunity for them to learn more about what's out there in the market and ways of using some of the products that are available. And, in case carrying all those full bags of goodies was making shoulders and arms sore, there was even one of the agencies set up a massage area in there, so they can get a little free therapeutic massage as part of the event. One of the other things that we did this year is we made an extra effort to outreach to the Latino community. We worked through the parish nursing program, through some of the churches, through some of the other nonprofits, through Easy Lift, to try to make the program as open as possible to them. We had several roving translators that were wearing the little yellow tags around their neck here on the lanyards, so they were able to identify the seniors who needed that type of help and help them out. We also placed signs on all of the tables that had Spanish-speaking staff, so people can be comfortable. We didn't have a lot of monolingual Spanish speakers, but we did have quite a few bilingual Spanish speakers, and they felt more comfortable speaking their native language. And I think that was another improvement that we made this year. there was quite a bit of an increase over the last 3 years. We had sorry, that's kind of a boring slide, but we had a 53% increase in participation over 3 years. So it was already a big event when we started this, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Even with doubling the price from $5 to $10, we had a significant increase from this year to last year. So this event continues to grow, and we're going to continue to try to make improvements to it so it can be the best possible service to the community. I'd like to thank our partners. We were just one of many agencies that stepped up and helped with the coordination and organization of the event. In particular, Cottage Health System and Sansom Clinic, because this event really relies on the flu shot component, and both of those agencies step up to the plate and provide those to the community. And what we've done is, for ease of processing, because you have to have the consent forms match exactly to the lot numbers for the flu shots. Each year, one of these agencies takes a turn. So this was Cottage's turn, and they did a great job providing the flu shots. We only had a commitment of 1,000, but we gave out 1,300 flu shots because they had kind of counted on or had a little extra inventory just in case we had extras, and we in fact needed those. So Cottage was this year, and next year we're looking forward to working with Sansom Clinic as a flu shot provider, and a lot of these other agencies will continue to be involved. So overall, a great event.
Excellent. Great. Is there questions for?
No, I just had a comment. It was like a walk down memory lane to see some pictures of people that I haven't seen in a while. But it's really grown, Jason, and it looks really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was a great event. My wife was there and saw some of her friends, and she enjoyed it. I've got just a quick question. Yes. With the $10 versus $5, from I'm going to call it a break-even perspective, how did we do financially?
Well, financially, Santa Barbara Bank and Trust is our financial partner on this, and they manage the bank account. We had a lot more expenses this year. We did we had to rent both buildings versus the one building. We had to print a lot more signs, but financially it's ahead. No one agency gets paid for this. We all kind of, we're on salary for our respective agencies, but no one makes a profit off of the Senior Expo. We started with, I think, $7,000 in the account, and then we ended with a little over $10,000 in the account. So next year we may be doing some more signage and use some of that money to make improvements in either marketing or some of the materials that we could use to make improvements to the seniors' experience at next year's Expo. So we're better off than we were last year, but it's not that we're paying any agency or anyone's making a profit off of it.
Thank you.
I think having MTD there is a brilliant idea. I think it's very difficult for people who've maybe driven their whole life and it's time to not drive anymore but they've never ridden a bus. It's a good experience to be able to have some familiarity with it. So I think that's just a brilliant idea. And also Easy Lift, thank you to them, but especially MTD because, some of us who don't have that experience, how do you make that transition?
And MTD was represented not only by the bus outside, but they had a booth inside, so they had extra opportunity to interact with the seniors.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you very much. It looked like a great event.
And thank you.
Okay, anything else on that, or are we moving on to?
I just wanted to make one more comment. The other night, Friday night, I'm driving down Carrillo, and to see the building totally dark on a Friday night was such a strange experience. I just wanted to say, I think everybody's feeling it.
Walking through it, not having a single desk or piece of furniture is downright eerie. Yeah.
And that's kind of our transition into changes here. We've had changes. Jason moving out in the Carrillo Rec Center, going through its changes, and now we have the transfer of registration and reservation services.
Chair Longstreet, members of the Commission, Sarah Hanna will provide this report to you.
I'm sorry to say my report won't be quite as interesting as that, but that is a fascinating event, and I congratulate Jason. He is instrumental with the team putting it together. There's a lot of work, and you guys have to go next year. It is so fascinating. So anyway, on to my topic. I wanted to give you some information on the transition that we've just done on moving registration and reservation services from the Parks and Recreation Administration building at 620 Laguna Street to different facilities within the department. To begin with, to give you a little background, at the front desk, we receive over 5,000 incoming and 4,000 outgoing phone calls. We also take lots of walk-in traffic, generating about 2,900 activity registrations and 1,000 facility reservations. And although this is considered the hub of our registration services and our customer service contact, we do process numerous registrations at other facilities. For instance, at the Carrillo Recreation Center, it's almost 3,800 registrations. At the Cabrillo Bathhouse, it's 1,500 registrations. Los Baños Pool, much smaller, about 120 registrations. And then we also accept about 3,100 registrations online in our e-recreation service. This totals to about 14,000 activity registrations for the department or the division, and doesn't include all of the facility reservations that take place. So we have, over the past several years, talked about scaling back the services that we provide there as a means of saving money. And we had kind of put it off because we knew Carrillo Recreation Center was closing, and we figured that the Carrillo Recreation Center and the Cabrillo Pavilion are the two hubs for facility and registration services. So we'd kind of put it off, but given that additional budget reductions were needed this year, we did see an opportunity for about $60,000 in savings from the hourly staff that works at those counters, and we decided to go ahead. And within about 2.5 weeks from the time we decided that we wanted to do that, we had put a relocation process into place so that we were able to begin on October 5th and maximize the savings that we had for this year. So we met with staff. Staff were very eager to take this on. We knew it was going to be a lot of extra work, but they saw the importance of meeting personally with their clients, and actually a lot of additional services can be provided when you meet with your clients personally, because there may be ancillary questions that they have that you can answer immediately, doesn't require a backup phone call, or else they may see other services that are provided. So we did realize it was going to be an inconvenience for our customers until they got the swing of it and knew where they should be going for their primary registration or facility reservations. We were very interested in maintaining our quality customer service that we have come to be very proud of. And we also wanted to balance the registrations throughout the facilities so that no one facility was impacted extraneously. And so those were the considerations when we talked about divvying up the services and where different services would go. So because we have recently moved youth activities down to the Cabrillo Bathhouse, and aquatics, the supervisor of aquatics also oversees sports and tennis, we only really had to move one thing to the Cabrillo Bathhouse for registration, which was the youth activities. And there is a significant amount of registration that takes place in youth activities, both for camps, so we'll see an impact next summer, but mainly for after-school programming. So, about 300 kids parents coming every 6 weeks to do registrations. So that will be somewhat of an impact there, but staff are there to answer questions and take that on. We also, with the movement of senior activities and adult activities over to the Davis Center, we moved the Carrillo Recreation Center registration services to Davis, and the Teen Center activities were moved to the Teen Center, where it was primarily taking place at this time. There wasn't really much of a change to the neighborhood and outreach services and that type of programming registration because it was taking place on site at this time. There was also a big shift in facility reservation responsibilities, and this was the area probably that took the most staff training because to the sites that it moved to, the staff were least familiar with what was involved in taking a facility reservation, and in particular, it was new types of facility reservations. So there are numerous park picnic rentals in our community, and those were mainly handled at the front desk. And when we first started talking about it, we knew we were going to, since we do have a high percentage of clients that are Spanish speaking, we knew we needed to have customer service that was able to walk clients through the process and speak with them in their native language, make them feel at ease, explain the services and the fees, and be succinct in what they were telling them. So the Neighborhood and Outreach Services section stepped up and said that they would be happy to take it on. They also saw the benefit that by bringing more families into their community centers, that they would also be able to link up with them and display other services or link them up with other services that are available in community centers and more of an awareness. So that was an added benefit by moving the park picnic rentals to those sites. We also moved McKinsey Adult Building reservations and Ortega Welcome House for nearly the same types of reasons because of the clientele that used those facilities. So those were the main changes for facility reservations, the picnic park sites, and also McKinsey Adult Building and Ortega Welcome House. And then beach volleyball courts that moved to the Cabrillo Bathhouse downstairs, where they do a lot of volleyball classes and services anyway, so it just made sense. So it's been a big change, but we haven't heard a lot from the public. There, of course, when you walk into the office at 620 and you've been diverted to another facility to register, it is an inconvenience the first time. And, you know, we had to be tactful. If it was very inconvenient for someone, we would take their reservation or their registration right then and then redirect them to where they should be going to next time. But we did maintain a full-time permanent staff at the front desk. They will answer the main phone line, redirect phone calls, greet customers, redirect customers, and then, of course, you know, there's a lot of meetings that take place in that building, so folks are going to meet staff or to go to staff meetings or et cetera. So we also, because we knew the volume of phone calls was high, we added a phone tree. So if the staff person is not able to answer the question immediately, what she'll do is find out what information she needs, where they want to be directed to, and immediately redirect the phone call to another staff person that's on duty at that time. So we hope in this way that they're always talking to someone on the phone, but in the event that the phone line is busy or it's a weekend or evening, we do have a phone tree set up so that it will redirect phone calls to a live person if we are open, or it will go to a voicemail box. So we've also slightly changed our hours. We're now going to be open from 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Thursday, and we will be open every other non-flex Friday for those same hours. So like I said, it seems to have gone pretty smoothly. I've called around to all the clerical staff to find out what they were experiencing, if they were experiencing difficulties or feeling stressed. You know, at first couple of days, it is kind of difficult, but people have kind of gotten the hang of it now. It's almost been a month, and we seem to be doing pretty well. So we're happy with the change and how smoothly it has gone. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chair Longstreet. Question. Are we putting any emphasis into driving people to the online registration? Is that a convenient system yet for people? Is it useful for all of the kinds of reservations that we're talking about? And other such questions?
Many segments of our community do not have computers. And so those segments of our community still walk in, fill out a hard copy form, and we process them right then and there. Or they may want to pay cash or something to that effect. So all of those folks we process right away. We do try to sell the online services, and if you already have an email account, you receive regular updates from our department on programs and activities that are taking place, and that always redirects you to e-recreation. But some folks don't feel comfortable using that, and so we're happy to help them in other ways.
Okay, and then another, I guess this is more of a comment. There have been several times you were talking about phone trees and things of this sort. There have been several times I've called in to particular people at the at 620 and gotten straight to their voicemail and have hit 0. And it's sort of this random thing as to where the call goes to at that point. I've gotten City Hall, I've gotten Aquatics, but never, for instance, someone in the building. So I'm hoping that someone can look at that. And
I believe, Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, I believe when you reach someone's voicemail, if you want to skip the message, you press pound, not 0.
no, typically on most systems you press 0 to get the operator who's on duty.
Yeah, I
and
think
that would be the person at the desk there.
Right.
And like I'm saying is that that's going to all sorts of different places that have no idea how to get in touch with anyone.
I think
at
what you'll
Market
reach now is the phone tree itself, and it will give you a series of press 1 for recreation, and then recreation has a subtree, press
Great.
2 for parks. It's a little bit more, we looked at it closely, it's a little bit more streamlined.
Great, thank you.
We'll try it out for you.
Chair Longstreet, if I could just add, I think Commissioner Hockman's may not be calling our recreation line, may be calling another staff person.
For instance, if I were
I can't-
calling you directly.
I can't remember what year it occurred, but let's say it's 5 years ago. I'm not 100% sure how long ago. The city made a concerted effort to take City Hall out of the routing process for phone calls. And so it may be, in fact, I'm assuming it is, if one does hit 0, the phone system will deal with it. However, randomly, the phone system will deal with it. It's not set up to accept someone pressing 0, is my recollection. And we certainly can take that as feedback. What happens when someone really just wants to get redirected somehow? The city's placed a lot of focus in advertising all the different numbers that people can call to get to the exact service they need, whether they have a sidewalk issue, a tree issue, they're interested in a recreation program, whatever it might be. So that may be part of what you're experiencing, and I'd be certainly happy to talk to our communications staff and see if they've had that response as well.
I think we're all going to try it now, though. See where we go. Other questions?
I had a question. For major events like the Jazz Festival and such, is that just being directed to the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion? I know we have some major events.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Connor, if you're talking about for information before the event organizer will have a direct phone line. If you're talking about contacting staff with a concern about a special event or after a special event, or you want to conduct a special event, yes, that's still being handled at Cabrillo Pavilion upstairs, Susan Jane Bardick.
Great, thanks.
Go on. No, go. No. Well, I just had one concern. With the Cabrillo Bathhouse is taking a lot of the registration. And is there any way in one of those parking lots there can be some 15-minute registration parking, especially in the summer? And I'm thinking of families with dragging a couple of kids in to register for a class.
Chair Longstreet, we did talk about parking at all of the facilities. I haven't seen the need. Currently, there's about 6 spaces in front of the Cabrillo Pavilion. for 15-minute parking, and we're redirecting folks downstairs to the beachside where they register. I haven't seen the need yet, but I agree with you.
Summer.
When we do reach the summer peaks, that may be a concern. We
Yeah.
may want to have another registration day because we don't have a front desk, which we did not conduct last year, only for junior guards. Do we have a registration day? We may want to go back to a summer camp. We're also looking at, okay, what furlough days? We're going to be closed for furlough for 2 weeks at the end of December, but many classes start January 4th. How are we going to get people registered? And that would have already happened because we'd already have furloughs. But now that, okay, now we have no hourly staff, you know, we have to kind of approach it differently to make sure that we're not missing folks or a single registration.
And I just would like to comment. This, to me, is a perfect example of having to adapt to budget cuts and staff having to really, you know, cooperate and move forward in things that may not be easy. So I would like to express my appreciation to staff's flexibility in trying new things and, you know, continuing to try to serve the public the best way they can. So, did you have a comment, Drago?
I had a couple of questions. So to book an event at the Teen Center, one would go to the Louise Lowry Davis Center? Is that correct?
Yeah, Commissioner Longstreet and Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Larimore Hall. At this time, because of the limited hours at the Teen Center, it's only open from 2:30 to 7, we decided that we would, there aren't very many rentals going on as it is,
Right.
but we decided because they are open from 8 to 5 at the Davis Center that we would try that out and see how that goes. We're coming into a season we're going to try to start pushing more facility rental advertising, and so we want to be available if someone wants to walk in.
So I mean, it's a similar question. Just, I mean, I think, you know, as Chair Longstreet said, like these are the kinds of things that we have to do to adapt, and I'm sure nobody thinks that it's optimal to have all of these sort of reservation services spread all over the city, but there's just some of them that seem a little counterintuitive, and I just want to get my head around them. And that was one of them, and that certainly makes sense. The other is the difference between booking outdoor sites for picnic versus non-picnic events are at different places, correct?
Correct.
But is that booking picnic versus non-picnic parts of parks or for different kinds of events? Because one sheet I have seems to imply one and the other the other. Do you understand my
Yes.
question?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Larimore Hall. The booking of non-picnic events in outdoor sites would include photo shoots, wedding ceremonies, larger or the outdoor activities that we just recently started, those types of events that take a more specialized eye and review process. And we didn't really want to throw that onto the community center staff to navigate.
So it's about type of event, not about
It's about
part
type of
park.
event,
Okay,
exactly.
Cool. Okay. Just want to make sure I understood.
It's a bit complicated, but I'm hoping citizens will bear with us. And, you know, in larger cities, they have decentralized registration and facility reservations. And we hope to raise our training levels and work more towards that in the future.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Just something brief about the online. Is that effective and working well? I see there were 3,000 people that registered last year online. Are there certain ones that can't register online because of the degree of ability to rent a site, like a huge event or something?
Yeah, Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Connor, the online the online is reserved for activity reservations and not facility reservations at this time. We don't have a system that is complex enough to hit all the questions and queries that we would need. We could probably move to picnic sites eventually, but it's a more bilingual clientele that are renting the picnic sites, so that might, those two demographics might not work out. When it's a special event or an outdoor event that's complex at all, we'd need a one-on-one with the client.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
But it did see 3,000 hits. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Out of
great.
about 4,000 registrations a year, so it's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And Chair, I think I will not ask my question, but at least, I was going to ask about the centralization of any of these. It certainly seems that with some cross-training, we could say, well, if here are 3 centers around town where this kind of reservation you could make. And I'm hearing you say that's something that you're aiming towards, but it would be a training issue as well as a computer issue.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, at the Cabrillo Pavilion, at the Carrillo Recreation Center, we do have full-time permanent staff. When you move out to other satellite facilities, often we have replaced permanent staff with hourly staff, and there may be a more quick turnover of staff. So yes, it is a training challenge, but it's not something that is we train for all kinds of things, so it's not something that we can't achieve. It's just something we're not prepared for fully today.
And I think some of our outlying facilities have, like the teen center, hours that are they're more suited to the events that happen there. It's not like you have a full-time person at the counter.
Right.
So yeah, it is a challenge. So, thank you.
Thanks.
And I'm impressed that it happened so quickly. And if the public has concerns, they should come up with their ideas, and you would like the feedback on how it's going and all of that. Okay. Yes.
Just a comment, possibly next month or the month after, you might come back and explain how it's coming along and give some input to the general public through this meeting. Might be a suggestion.
I would be happy to.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we will move on to our next item, which is the annual P3 performance measurement report. Ms. Zachary?
Chair Longstreet, members of the Commission, it's hard to believe that this is our 7th year doing performance measures.
Yes, it is.
It certainly, we were on a fairly steep learning curve for probably the first 2 or 3 years, and I think the department and probably the city organization has hit its stride, which is partly reflected in our performance last year in spite of the economic challenges that our department and the city faced. And each year we provide you with, which is sort of the final quarter report. We track these things on a quarterly basis. We report to the city administrator on a quarterly basis. And then at the year end, we kind of wrap it all together and see how well we performed. So for this year, we achieved 86% of our performance measures, which is an improvement over 83% in fiscal year 2008. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the individual P3s. Generally, we don't go through them one by one or give you highlights. We assume that if there are things that are of interest to you, we can cover them. But I'd also like to add, before we take your questions, if there are any, is that performance measures are a useful tool for our department. Not only do they help us communicate what it is that we do in terms of providing community services, but it allows us to track and monitor how efficient and how effective we are. And there are times when we might be a little more ambitious and not get everything done, and so you'll see that there isn't a check next to objective achieved, or funding might have gone away for an objective, so we were unable to achieve it, or we changed direction in mid-year and determined that maybe that wasn't where we should be spending our time. I think overall, from division to division, our performance in 2009 was exceptional, and really gives you a broad brush of all the things that our department does. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I would just comment that when I look through the report, the objectives that weren't achieved, how many of those were related to budget issues? Either a funding cut or we didn't have enough to continue this program. It really brought home to me the impact of the budget. So I think, I know we're all aware of it all the time. It's just when you see it in paper, some black and white, it makes a difference. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I just have a comment. As I glanced through the report over the weekend, a couple of items I saw where I said, well, why did they do it this way versus that way? And I don't want to micromanage by any means, but what's the most appropriate way if I have a question, or if somebody else, reading the report has a question, do they just send an email to Nancy or you to say, how come? And that's the most appropriate method, or what are your thoughts?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, certainly feel free to send us an email with your question, and we'd be happy to answer it and copy the rest of the commissioners so that they know you've asked that question. Each year we also develop our performance measures, and so certainly if you have feedback for us now, in addition to crunching all the numbers for the budget, come January, we also have to come up with our performance measures for the next fiscal year, and so it helps if we have suggestions or feedback from you. So be happy to do that.
Right. Great.
Thank you. Chair Longstreet, Ms. Zachary. In looking through this, I'm finding one performance measure that is related to grants and financial scholarship. And I'm, wondering if I'm missing any. I'm seeing one in, I guess it's in cultural arts. Item number 2, which is to achieve $16,000 in grants for the Concerts in the Parks program, which spurs my imagination to wonder, are we going after grants in other areas as well as part of performance measures? And if so, I've missed them. And how effective do we think going after grants is? So that'll just be a suggestion for looking forward.
Longstreet, I think that's a question and a statement, perhaps, but I have some answers that might be helpful for Commissioner Hockman. There are different grant things sprinkled throughout here, and it depends in part on the program. If that's a performance measure that program would like to track, there's things that we do that aren't here. So in the case of cultural arts, that is a performance measure that's important to that program. Not that it's not important to other programs. Under the administration program, we actually pull together all of the grants and donations and volunteer hours throughout the department, and the next presentation will give you an overview of that. That's information that's also kept on the side, so we have that detail. It may not make it into a P3. For the Creeks Division, I think there are 2 performance measures related to grants. One is a commitment to apply for them. That's always the first step, and then tracking how much actually came in. Sometimes it can be a little risky to set a grants goal, although, as you know, for this year, we do have a number of grants goals, and as we go into the next couple of fiscal years, that will probably only expand. Because sometimes one could apply for a grant in December and the money actually doesn't come in for 18 months. But the effort's out there. So we generally track money and resources as they come into the organization.
I'd like to comment about knowing that the cultural arts grant was very effective in the past, and because of the economic downturn, our grantors are in the same boat we are, and I can see why that objective was hard to make. But hopefully the future will change that.
Yes. Other questions or comments? Well, thank you for the report. I know we've all looked at it, and it is helpful, and look forward to seeing. Yeah, I remember a time when we weren't sure we were ever going to get through the part where you had to do the reporting. Okay, well, that brings us to annual contributions. It's kind of a nice segue.
Chair Longstreet and commissioners, I will be providing this report. It's something that traditionally the business manager did, but as you know, we are without one for the time being. And we do this on an annual basis. It gives you a roundup of the various contributions that have come into the department by the different divisions. I have my Recreation and Parks colleagues, and so if there's a very detailed question that I can't answer, I'm sure they'll be able to jump in and help me out. And Santos Escobar is running the slides for me, since I was planning to sit down there earlier today. Your staff report gives you quite a bit of detail and background, so I am, in the interest of time, going to run through these slides and know that if you refer back to something in the report, we certainly will address those. We track our contributions by 4 different categories. Cash donations, so money that comes in either for a specific purpose or gets put in a program saying I support for aquatics programs or support for the Mission Rose Garden, for example. Grants, and grants can be awarded for a program or a specific project, and often the larger grants are for significant projects, and you can see the Creeks Division, as an example, brings in significant grants for construction projects. That's that role of that division. Non-cash donations, our department benefits greatly from non-cash donations that we receive from organizations and businesses and individuals for the implementation of programs, and you'll see that in the Recreation Division, there's this more significant amount there than perhaps in another division. And then volunteers. That's something that we're constantly discussing, the role of volunteers in our department. And that also varies by division, the type of volunteer activity that we have, and that's reflected in the numbers that we have for you. Next one. So just as a quick overview, for fiscal year 2009, a total of $34,000 in cash, almost $1.6 million in grants. Next slide. And then non-cash, just over $212,000 in value, and volunteer hours, over 41,000 volunteer hours. We'll break that down a little bit for you so you can see where it comes from. So division by division, the Recreation Division, this gives you a sense of some of the significant cash donations and how much they were and what they were for. And it also demonstrates the breadth of support for our programs, everything from concerts in the park to teen center, soccer league, specific activities like the youth leadership banquet, and then grants from Tobes Foundation, Rotary, and the County Education Office. Non-cash donations, a big amount for value from Rincon Broadcasting, and that is for the concerts in the parks and outreach. And then other amounts depending on the type of program. So if it has to do with the ball field, you'll see that there's donations for field reconditioning. The Neighborhood and Outreach Services section does an extraordinary amount of work related to the farmers market and programs for seniors and people that need additional assistance. And then we'll have things like you just had your free family portraits, people that step up and volunteer their services and do something really neat for people in the community. And our role is to facilitate that. So it's that's the role we play there. Next. Volunteer hours, they vary also by program depending on the type of volunteers, active adults, and looks like Jason Bryan is in here. He has a huge number of volunteers that really relate to program implementation. Community services, also with their programs. Within these numbers, there's also the volunteer hours for the advisory committees, and certainly in teen programs. That shows you volunteer hours for the teens that are supporting those efforts. Parks Division, slightly different than Recreation. It's usually site-specific or program. In the case of the Wade Endowment Fund, that's specific to the Rose Garden, and that's something that we get on an annual basis. Santa Barbara Beautiful, every year we apply for small grants for projects, and that $8,100 last year supported the re-landscaping of the Franklin Center when the improvements were completed there, and then also a youth apprentice project that we did that summer. For grants, our grants vary. We are very fortunate to have the Parma Park Trust. On an annual basis we do, and we consider it a grant because we report. Now we're reporting almost quarterly on our expenditures and what we're doing, and the trustee has to approve what we're doing and also approve what we'll be doing for the next year or 2 years before they will disperse any funds. We did receive some other grants. Prop 40 per capita grant was for the completion of the Bonnet Park improvement project. We have a small grant from California Department of Forestry and Fire for our urban forest assessment program that recently got unfrozen as part of the bond money and grant money that was frozen for a long time at the state level. And then other projects, Santa Barbara Beautiful stepped up and gave us money for Plaza Veracruz, and the Bonnet family for Bonnet Park. Non-cash donations, a little bit different for parks because we don't actually actively put on programs and out there seeking donations, but this number represents funding largely from Santa Barbara Beautiful that I'm not sure we've accounted for on an annual basis. As you know, when we replant trees in the city of Santa Barbara Beautiful pays for those trees. And so this is the value of all the trees that were planted in 2009 that Santa Barbara Beautiful just pays for. And we are able to purchase the trees and pick up the trees and install them. And it also includes, I think, a small amount of money for some young tree care. Our former city arborist comes back every year and does some work through Santa Barbara Beautiful for our trees. Volunteer activity is very project, site-specific, task-specific, and so it'll vary from year to year. And this gives you an example of the different parks where we had volunteer work days. I would say, as we all know, the Rose Garden wouldn't be the Rose Garden if we didn't have the volunteers to maintain those that area. Next. Creeks Division, Commissioner Hockman and Chair Longstreet have seen slides like this before, and I think the Commission has as well. Creeks Division had a banner year of bringing grants in, and those three agencies give you a sense of where they came from. Almost over $600,000 from the California Department of Fish and Game for creek projects, fish projects along Mission Creek. State Water Board, we've successfully had grants to do a lot of the water quality research and treatment. And then as part of the golf course project, we have a small grant from the Southern California Wetlands Recovery Project to integrate the students in planting the swale along Adams School. Next, thanks. Creeks Division's volunteer hours really focus, similar to parks, on an actual day. A day in the creek doing a cleanup, a day at a creek doing a planting. And so you'll see that there's a different level of volunteerism for creeks. Next. So looking across the last 3 years, you can see that we've had some variation, but it's been on the increase since 2008 fairly significantly in terms of cash grants and non-cash donations. And our volunteer hours have been fairly steady. We show you the volunteer hours here because we tracked it differently in 2007. The value, we tracked it $9 an hour, and now we've increased it to $12 an hour because we really sat down and thought, okay, really what is the value to our department? And so the value has increased over time in terms of monetary value, but the hours are fairly steady, and it shows that our department as a whole benefits hugely from people that volunteer and help us implement. If you look at that full-time equivalent, that's almost 20 people in 2009 that we have in volunteer hours.
Excellent.
Wanted to also show you where we are to date, because this is a year in review, and we've just finished the numbers for our first quarter. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we track this on a quarterly basis. It shows up in the P3 for Parks and Recreation Administration. Gives you a sense of where we are to date in terms of cash donations and grants. We're already ahead in a lot of respects on just about every division. And that's a result of the work of both work prior to the beginning of the fiscal year, but funds coming in over time. The Creeks Division, just to note, that seems like an extraordinary number. It is an extraordinary number, and there are 2 significant stimulus grants that the Creeks Division competed for and acquired, and those are for the Las Positas Stormwater project, and then also we're in the process of installing catch basin debris screens on every drop inlet within the city of Santa Barbara. So if you've noticed those springing up around town, it's directly a result of a stimulus grant. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. And as I indicated in the beginning and throughout the presentation, we are really, really supportive and benefit from all the volunteerism that we have in our department and the grants and the financial support that we receive. And it really makes our programs a success as well.
Can you flash back to that last screen for 2010? Yeah, I mean, I think it's significant to look at the numbers in like recreation and see that already's exceeded the total of last year, and I think that staff is working hard to up that money, and it is noticed. So thank you very much. It was a talk about making that a focus. That's been a lot of pressure. It's tough times to raise money, and thank you. So, your work is greatly appreciated. But I think it's good to keep that one up there.
Chair Longstreet, if I could just add, for parks, it looks like an extraordinary number too. We got a $186,000 grant, which is being managed through the County of Santa Barbara, but really comes from the Department of Labor, and those funds are being used to rehabilitate Parma Park. So that's a very focused, specific grant there.
And those significant grants are important, but part of that is, we all know that you have to have those projects ready to step into line. So, like with the Creeks Division, you don't get the stimulus money if you haven't already thought out the project. So, all that groundwork is well used at this point. So, thank you. Other questions and comments? Yes, Mr. Burns.
Just one question. How does the money funnel through us through the Park Foundation, or should we put that on as a separate line item for us? Because I know, like, the Park Foundation is getting a check of about $4,000 in a couple of weeks from Whole Foods. Or will we be showing that on our report?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, certainly the source of the funding will show. If we go back a few slides, you'll see different types of donations, and oftentimes the Park Foundation is the vehicle through which that money gets deposited. We do keep detailed records, and we can certainly give you even more detail exactly where the money came from and where it's being held. Those additional funds should show up in our second quarter report.
But I don't think in the last couple of years that the Park Foundation has given any money. They have held money that has come through other organizations, but they haven't raised any money that's been given to a program. I think that's why they don't show up anywhere. Like the DFP money goes through there, but it isn't raised by the Park Foundation. Right?
Chair Longstreet, that's correct. And I'll just, as an example, we actually don't get any funding for DFP anymore because of the value of the endowment has declined to the point where they don't disperse money for that park.
But don't they also hold the money for, like, the Friends when they pay for the small amounts of money, but the plants?
Chair Longstreet, yes, they do. And I think on a regular basis, we realize the value of the Park Foundation to our department both in terms of our working relationship with the foundation and also that it gives people an opportunity to place funds in a nonprofit, in a community foundation for a very specific purpose, and we ultimately benefit from that.
And we need more people to place some funds for very specific purposes. Other questions, comments? Okay, well, thank you. That's encouraging for this year. Thank you for all your hard work, everyone. Do we have anything to report out on the budget at this point?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I just wanted to, for the record, indicate we did have the work session on the Parks Division budget on October 6th. We're looking at scheduling the recreation discussion for early December. We had originally discussed having it at the end of your regular meeting in November. We'll be back in touch with you with more details, but in terms of looking at staff availability and the appropriate amount of time for the Commission's discussion, we'll probably push that to early December.
Okay, thank you. Questions on that? All right. And our last item is neighborhood outreach services.
Good evening again, Commissioners. I'm going to give you a brief highlights from what's taken place since the last Commission meeting in Neighborhood and Outreach Services. After the Commission met, the Commission representatives met with the advisory committees and talk about the reformation of the advisory committees. It was decided at that meeting for them to be subcommittee meetings to meet with the community members. And 2 of those meetings took place, one on the west side and one on the east side, and they received input and had a discussion with the neighbors and talked about the reorganization process. So we'll be receiving notes back from those 2 meetings, and a new meeting will be rescheduled to bring that formation committee back together to work on that. Also, 2 hourly staff persons were hired to coordinate the teen activities that are going to be held at Franklin and the Westside Neighborhood Centers. They will be operating at both centers from 3 in the afternoon until 7 at night. And during this month, they also had outreach, and over 100 youth were contacted in these neighborhoods and recruited to come in, take part in organizing and participating in these teen activities, and also determining what types of activities they would like to see to come in. Because of this increased outreach, community service hours for teens has increased 448% over the same period of time last year. So it just takes a few people that know the neighbors and know the neighborhoods to get out there and contact the teens, and they will come. So that was good. The Job Apprentice Program is also currently hiring apprentices for the school year and work after school. We're going to be conducting 2 sessions of 10 participants for a total of 100 work hours each, and they will participate in job skills training, and also we are recruiting from departments other city hourly positions that they could be placed in after school, evenings, and weekends. We also recently received $6,000 for the Healthy Options for Teens program from the Santa Barbara Foundation. It was a continuation from last year. It's a health education type of program. It works with teens to do healthy activities, to talk about nutrition, physical activities, and such. And currently it was taking place at the 1235 Teen Center. We plan on expanding those services out to Franklin and Westside as well. We also expanded some of the youth services at the Franklin Center, Sononada Jaraco Music Program, where there's about 18 students engaged, have signed up for the program. They're learning to play musical instruments and in native Mexican style, and eventually they will work with the instructor to build instruments, and apparently he's very good at it, and so we're very excited about that. It's something very different. Recruitment's underway for the community garden program. The application period opens up on November 1st. And as we will be presenting at the Executive Council of the South Coast Gang Task Force. The next meeting is on November 4th, and we will be giving them a summer wrap-up of the activities that we did in coordination with the Santa Barbara County Education Office and the caseworkers that managed those youth that were going through that program. So you'll probably be hearing more about that after it happens.
Thank you. Are there questions?
Yes, who oversees the 2 new staff?
Well, Antonio Velasquez at the West Side and Ricardo Venegas at the Franklin Center.
I just wanted to say it's great to hear the numbers are up and that the outreach into the neighborhoods has definitely been a very positive thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't be happy about that. That is wonderful.
Very good.
Yeah.
Mr. Byrne.
Just a question, and this is coming out of left field as usual from me. The teen council now is more of a part of the outreach and neighborhood. They meet twice a month. We might look at having one of their meetings at the West Side and another meeting at a different month at Franklin Center, just to get more knowledge from the teens of what's going on there and vice versa. I'm not sure how the details would work out, but I'd like to throw that out there if there's any
Fair
potential.
Longstreet and Commissioner Birds, that's an excellent idea. It's an excellent idea. Typically, they host the meetings right here in this forum, and that's an excellent idea to have them out where the kids are and recruit those kids to participate.
See, it wasn't so far out. in
Yeah.
left field.
That was a great idea. It's the best idea.
A very good
in a
idea,
long
but I'm
time.
sometimes a fan of ideas from left field. So
Okay, I'll try to be quiet in the future.
or left side.
Okay, other comments or questions?
I just wanted to say that I think that this process, this restructuring process, and rethink, I'm disappointed that it's not getting as much discussion as sort of outside of the department, in the community, in other sectors of the city, in the media, et cetera. Not to point fingers, but it's this city is facing a lot of challenges, and in an election season, a lot of people are wanting to sort of make hay out of those challenges, et cetera. But this is a real, I think, honest attempt to address some really negative trends and negative things that are happening in our community with structurally, and trying to get at them and get at the roots of problems, et cetera, which I think is very positive. And the fact is that it's just like the burden that gets lumped on schools to fix every social problem in a classroom, setting. Like, we're not going to fix everything that's wrong or that's difficult or challenging to Santa Barbara by restructuring our neighborhood and outreach services programs. But it's a start. I think it's a big part of it. And I just want to, in general, invite other forces in the community, other actors in the community, the business, advocacy organizations, labor organizations, all different sectors of the community, to sort of start paying a little closer attention to this discussion and this process, because I think it's a tree that we can hang a lot of really nice ornaments on, and really start addressing a lot of these problems fundamentally.
That's very true. I think it goes with that thing, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. I think we have a lot of people that want to just point at the problems, but it is nice to see some work going towards the solutions. So, okay. Well, with that, I think, thank you. Good to end on that note. And we have no old business, no new business. I think we can adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.